Local newspapers are thriving across the country.
Thanks for joining us live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller.
Community newspapers is more than just a newspaper. We're all over social media, connecting our community. Let's go, Miami, go! Miami Community Newspapers has over 11 e-newsletters to serve Miami-Dade County. Our job is to connect our community to everybody. Miami Community Newspapers, it's Miami!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the MiamiHal Real Estate Show. It's Hal and Hav.
I'm leaving because
we ran the wrong open for you, Hav. But that's okay because we know that Hav Gonzalez,
I'm back.
Realtor extraordinaire, is with us. We're both with Remax Advanced Realty, and today we're going to go a little bit inside the numbers and share with our audience what's going on, at least from our perspective with the market, correct? And every single week, we do encourage people that are watching live, if you do have a question, we'll try to get to that today. I think we're going to have time to do so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ask away.
Hav, I'm going to do this because I'm kind of a man of leisure these days.
We're leaning back. Everybody's leaning back a little bit.
And it's not a particularly good feeling because many agents out there are at the ready to help their buyers and sellers and folks that need to rent. Yeah. But it's really quiet.
Yeah, I think we're just in a transition period, not only with you have the elections coming up, but the feds have already announced that they're going to drop another half point. So that's going to make your interest rates go down even more. So if you're not like dying for a home, why would you like activate the market right now? So
yeah. Do you watch CNBC?
No, I don't. Okay. I am CNBC.
I watch CNBC, and before the Fed last meeting, there were all these experts, so-called experts, that were sitting there predicting, is it a quarter point, is it a half point? And I have to give you props because you sat on this show and said, it's going to be a half point. You were convict. You had absolute conviction in those numbers, and you were correct.
Yep. And I think, and again, they've announced already that they're going to go to another half. It's going to be a quarter and a quarter. Okay. So you're going to have a quarter.
You heard it here first. Yep. A quarter and a quarter is what's going on.
A quarter
here.
in November and a quarter in December.
Okay.
And then remember, their target rate for next year is even to lower it even more, probably by another full point.
Okay. Another thing which I just read the headline on, so I'm definitely not well versed in this, is I heard
that the Dolphins suck. Oh, I'm sorry.
We were not going to give the Dolphins airtime because clearly they're not giving us football here.
Exactly, yeah.
But the headline was, and I thought this was really interesting, that since sometime in 2022, the Fed is actually bankrupt, and they're writing IOUs to the government.
That one I haven't. That I haven't heard.
Yeah, they've made no money since 2022, and so I'm wondering how that rears its ugly head at some point, because if they are obviously trying to stimulate the economy in the right way, with this half point and potentially another half point before the end of the year. They're going to make less and less on the loans that are being produced at that level of government. I don't know what's going to happen, but just a sideline, right?
I'll get on that.
Okay, good. I'm sure you know everything. Next show. A good tease.
Yeah, there you go.
But I do want to kind of stop and say something that's very important to our audience, and that is that the Fed rate does not directly change what interest rates are for home mortgages.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that. I did some numbers recently because people obviously want to know, hey, are the interest rates going to go down? Right. And literally for the 2 months prior to the Fed meeting, where they did lower it 0.5%, we saw all the interest rates for the 30 and the 15 in particular, those are the numbers I have in my head, trickle down in anticipation of that move.
Of course.
And the anticipation was for either a half or a quarter.
Right.
Okay. So the mortgage interest rates came down based on that, and the Fed make their announcement, and guess what happens? The 30 went down slightly, but at less velocity than it did before the announcement.
Right.
And the 15-year actually went up.
Because they knew the number.
Somebody explain, and it looks like you know the answer. How do you explain that to a home or a potential home buyer?
No, it's difficult. That's why I don't get into the mortgage game.
Okay.
So I am a real estate agent. I am, as we like to say in Miami, I am a realtor. So I don't get caught up in that. You know, and they always say, you know, what is it? Date the rate and marry the house. But I do know that the rates are going to come down. I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing, you know, a little bit of a pause as people, and also you have the elections too. So that's always been one of the.
You've now mentioned the elections twice. And obviously the last, I'd say 3.5 to 4 years in real estate has been tumultuous, right? Yeah. We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff happen both inside the real estate market and external forces, COVID, that have significantly affected the real estate market. But we know as realtors, I'm going to say it you say it your way, I'll say it mine.
Yeah, there you go.
That every 4 years, when we have a presidential election, regardless of how political it becomes or how crazy or calm it becomes, every 4 years, certainly the commercial sector in this country basically shuts down because they're waiting for a decision to be made by the public. Who is going to lead our country for the next 4 years? Right. And they sit on the sidelines.
Or who's not going to lead our country?
That's true. And they say, you know, we're going to just wait. We don't like uncertainty.
The markets do not like uncertainty. Right. The markets like to know what is certain and what is calm.
So we have that absolutely in our heads as we head into this year, which is a presidential election year. Is this one different in your mind?
Not really. I think at the end of the day, I still see the interest rates are our biggest movers, and also the fact that there are a lot of people out there that, you know, with all the new laws and then for real estate, there is just uncertainty in the market in general as a whole. From, you know, we are the main drivers, right, of real estate, for not only the clients, but we also we're producers. You know, one of the questions we talked about earlier was, you know, how do you get clients? How do you push clients? How do you work clients? And that's one of the things. We are an economic driver. Yeah. And that a lot of people don't realize that, you know, we can move a market. So when we are unstable because of laws that are being implemented, and they just get screwier and folks, it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. We've already had, you know, 18 million addendums to our addendums. There's so much confusion out there that it's. Okay, we're going to talk about that. So
yeah, we're actually let's take our pause and our turn to try to describe this. Deep breaths. Okay. And I'm going to start and please fill in where you like to. So folks out there, when you are negotiating for purchasing a home or selling your home, you start with the contract paperwork. Okay, it's not a contract yet, but we call it the contract paper anyway. And you go in and you fill out terms that you'd like to write. That contract, the base contract, and there's 2 versions of it here in the state of Florida that are predominantly used. Either one of those, they can be used for a lot of things. They can be used for a single family home. They can be used for a condo. Pretty standard, right? But they can also be used for a dock space. They can be used for a mobile home.
Been there, done that.
Okay. So you can imagine the language is kind of general. So when a realtor, speaks about addendum, what they're really talking about is the additive papers that attach to the base contract to customize that contract for the actual property that's being transferred between buyer and seller. So we have standard things, right? Our standard addenda would include things like lead-based paint, right?
Condo.
Yep.
Like you said.
The condo, the condo rider, which would tell a buyer, hey, you're buying a condo, so you're going to have to go through an approval process. This is the...
Read the condo docs.
Yes, read the condo docs.
Read the budget.
Okay.
So that way you don't say, oh, I didn't know. And yes, you did.
Yeah. And there are every year. It seems like a blossoming weeds worth of addenda that keeps being added to make sure that our litigious society doesn't have.
That's a big word,
sliver.
dude.
Litigious?
Wow, I was impressed.
How do you say litigious?
I can't even come up with that word. Okay. I does not even comprehend.
So we've had things like addenda that now include whether or not you have a sewer or septic system at your home.
Mold, which you have.
Right, which everybody has. Got it.
We're in South Florida. You have it.
And so as we now enter 2024, we've seen
25.
Well, we're in 24.
Yeah, if you're worried about Project 2025, look at us. We're going to be out of the
We're not going political, please, Hav.
No, real estate in general. We got our own problems in 25.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
All right, so here's where we are. Where we are is there's a lot of addendum. And with the change...
And that's on the contract side. We're not talking about the listing side.
Right.
Which has changed 20 times.
That's true. Yeah. So let's talk about the listing side a little bit. Okay, so we talked about addenda.
Yeah.
All this stuff, the contract itself, all the addenda are agreements between a buyer and a seller.
Contract
the
side.
Agents who are helping do not take part in the actual terms of that contract.
Right. Well, no. What you have the terms on the buyer's side that you're representing a buyer, and you have the terms on the seller side because how you are compensating.
Right.
Compensating.
But those buyers and sellers are creating an agreement amongst themselves.
Yep.
The buyers and sellers cannot on the contract say, by the way, that agent is going to get paid X. It doesn't mean anything because the agreement is between the buyer and seller.
Addendum. Well, it tells you what you're going to get.
We're going to get there, yes. But going to the listing side, before all this craziness starts, a seller will sit down and say, I want to interview these 3 or 4 or 10 or maybe even just one agent. They have them come over and they have discussions and they decide who they're comfortable with.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Of course.
So I've been doing this, 22, 23 years. I've only been in one competitive listing side. Listing presentation.
We're going to come back to why that is. You know why that is, Jav? Because you are so ingrained in the community.
Oh yeah, that's because
that people just know to call you, right? Hey, it's time to sell. I'm just going to call Jav. Get it done. Okay, we're coming back to that. So now in that listing presentation, the seller gets a chance to look at who they're in front of and decide whether or not they want to work with them. And that agent is raring to put that listing agreement on the table and get it signed. The listing agreement has changed in a pretty significant way.
Twice.
I think it's actually the third go-around. Yes, it's almost the third go-around.
I lost one in the middle.
Okay. And why don't you explain to the audience why those changes have taken place on the listing agreement?
Okay, hold on.
Did I stump you?
Yeah, you didn't stump me. You started with all the 10 C's and 10 A's and 10 B's. I want to revert back to where we were. Okay?
Good. You tell us where we were on a listing agreement.
When we were on a listing agreement and also on the multiple listing service when you did it, obviously you were allowed to put the compensation that you were offering the buyer's agent. That's right. On the multiple listing service, they got sued. We negotiated, blah blah blah, and that's gone.
Okay, so
then on the list,
the takeaway is no commissions on the MLS.
Compensation, nothing.
Okay, thank you.
I said it still now had the buyer's thing where you could say you compensate the buyer, not the buyer, but I think that's gone too. So the more important part now, we have the listing agreement that. Basically,
the old listing agreement.
The old listing agreement said that you were going to contribute to the buyer's agent, and it was listed. The seller knew exactly what they were going to be paying, and again, sometimes it was less because it would be negotiated at the end. And that's one of the things that frustrates me is like they say, "Oh, this was standard." No, it's not standard because there's so many things that happen on a transaction where agents give up a point or give up a half point or give up even more just to make sure that the deal gets done. Because there's certain things that come up on a contract or come up on the actual negotiation of the property. Because I hate to say it, but buyers are liars and sellers are too, and they tell you things that aren't real, and then all of a sudden it shows up. Because why? Because we're good at what we do, and we find that the roof is 17 million years old.
17 million.
Right, exactly. So basically it's a thatched roof. with 2 tiles on top.
Good.
And so at the end of the day, tell us everything. But I'm going on a sidetrack. But again, from
listing agreement, old listing agreement.
Here's
what you're going to pay the listing brokerage.
Right.
And that listing brokerage is going to pay a percentage or some amount of that original amount you're paying that listing brokerage to the buyer's brokerage.
We are going to participate with the other sides. So then we get sued, right? And all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
And now you tell them what we currently do on the listing agreement, which is, oh, by the way, exactly the same thing we did before.
Okay. So here's what it is now. Rather than just filling out from the old, hey, the listing brokerage is going to share this amount with a buyer's broker. We have that option still. That's 10A.
So we still have the option that we had before.
Yeah. We still have the option we had before.
Okay. So remember,
which is interesting because
isn't that why we got sued?
Yeah, and it's not on the MLS, but still a seller can choose to select that. We're going to come back to that because I'm going to tell you, don't do that.
No, I know.
Okay. 10B is, hey, I'm a seller. I'm going to pay my listing brokerage a commission.
Right.
And I'm going to offer the buyer's broker a commission directly from me as a seller.
Right.
It's not going to pass through the listing brokerage.
Right.
That's option 10B. 10C is worded very interestingly, and there's a lot of interpretation. The latest meetings and the latest attorney read of this that I have heard is that it basically says, what's that? What's the big word?
What's that litigate thing? That word you use?
Litigious.
Litigious. Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
I'm impressed.
Well, I was just talking about.
Sorry, no, that's right.
Talking about attorneys.
There you go.
We could get to litigious stuff soon. 10C basically says, hey, I want this listing brokerage to list the home, and I'm going to pay them, but I'm not going to tell anybody anything about what I'm going to do for either the buyer or the buyer's brokerage.
Right. Correct.
Don't do that.
Right.
Okay. Now,
remember, the buyer's broker still needs to have a buyer's broker agreement.
We're getting there. You're fast tracking this. Okay.
Sorry.
I got 13 minutes.
30 minutes, man. It's like a 30 minutes. Let's go.
Okay.
Come on, I ain't got time for this. I'm old.
Listing agreement. Mr. Seller, you now have 3 options.
By the way, it's the same thing that you had before.
Okay. We're going to get to which choice is correct. But when this all went down... Is
there a correct choice?
Well, I believe there is.
Okay. So, I agree.
So there are 3 choices there, right? At the beginning, that was a reaction to the fact that the MLS can no longer have commissions listed in it. But our MLS, maybe not all across the country, but the one that is used here in South Florida, said, listen, we can't put commissions in there, but we can say whether or not the seller is going to offer a concession
to the buyer.
Or another choice was added to the MLS is, hey, they're not offering you a concession, but we will consider one in your offer.
Right, but it's to the buyer.
To the buyer, not to the agents. Right. This is seller to buyer.
Seller to buyer.
Makes total sense, right?
Right.
Except it's very confusing. So what happens after a couple weeks of everybody playing around with these new options in the MLS? We find out, for whatever reason, that the MLS has decided to drop those 2 fields.
No more.
So
bye-bye.
Why do we still have it on the listing agreement? Because they were supposed to be parallel to each other, right? You write something down on the listing agreement,
remember,
it gets reflected in the listing.
You don't have to put your property on the MLS.
That's true. Okay.
You can still get a listing agreement and not put your property on the MLS.
You're going to the 201 class, not the real estate 101 class. We're doing 101
that should be our future, where we get rid of the MLS and the board and a lot of other people.
Now you're in 301 class.
Yeah, they don't like me.
Okay. So what's interesting is all the agents and buyers and sellers are trying to catch up with things. And just when we thought, okay, we'll figure this out, the 2 fields get dropped out of the MLS, and now there's just nothing spoken about that at all.
Nope.
So now we're going to get to which is the right answer on 10A, B, or C.
Which answer? Well, everybody has a different opinion of it, but go ahead. Go to your 10C, because I know you're a 10-seer.
I'm a 10-seer.
You're a 10-seer. Why are you a 10-seer?
Because I understand what negotiation means. And just like the rest of the contract has a purchase price and then a whole bunch of contingencies and fields you can fill in. Hey, I'm going to do inspections for 12 days.
Right.
No, you're not.
No.
There's a negotiation on how many days of inspection. There's a negotiation for a lot of things that are on the contract.
Everything,
So why would I have my seller say, listen, I don't care who comes, I'm going to give them X percent as a concession.
But you haven't announced that.
Why would I do that up front?
I know, but you haven't announced that.
Okay. But if they select that box and we start to have conversation,
True.
It's giving things up way too early.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree with you.
Bring an offer. Holistically,
insult me with your offer.
Exactly. Holistically, the seller looks at all the terms and says, I really do want to sell to this person.
Right. But that person is telling you the number.
And we're close enough on number, and we can negotiate that, and we can negotiate the inspection things. And I don't want to tell them that I'm willing to give them any money. Maybe down the road, to finish this thing off, I'll give it up. Just like agents, halfway through a transaction when there's something really wrong on an inspection and there's $10,000 worth of something, and the agents figure out how to get the deal done. Okay, and maybe even giving up some of their own money to do that. Right? That's my answer. 10C is, in my mind, the only answer I will ever suggest to a seller that they should be really looking at.
I agree.
I can't make the decision for them.
No.
Those three fields are there for a reason. It's because at all times, consumers, buyers and sellers,
always have been,
have a choice.
Always have been.
Okay? They can negotiate commission rates. They can negotiate everything that they want before the place is listed.
Right.
And that's my answer. Do you have an answer different than 10C?
No, I think 10C. I think 10C is the correct answer because you don't know what the buyer's broker's deal is. So maybe the buyer's broker is working for X amount that is less than whatever you think is out there. So at the end of the day, what I like now is that the deal comes in with the full Monty. You know what I mean? It comes in and saying, hey, listen, these are the numbers that are out there. This is what we're making our deal on. And then we can negotiate that deal. Okay. So you can come in at 15%, and I can tell you I'm going to give you 0.5%, and then we can argue as much as you want, and and we go from there. And it is. I think 10C is the way to go, especially from a listing side. And I think the buyer's agents have to work towards it. But what I've noticed, going back to why the business I think is off, is that between the buyer and the buyer's agent, they still don't have that agreement. And we talked about it briefly about on the leasing side. The leasing side is like completely off the charts. Like there's no, I haven't even seen any broker come to me like with a leased, like that they have a deal with their tenant. Hell, half the tenants don't even qualify for the properties. Right. So let's face that. So it's okay. It's fun times in the real estate market.
Very briefly, I'll touch upon leasing, and then we need to get off that because there's still much more to do on the purchase side.
There is.
There is.
Really?
So on the leasing side,
how much time we got? You got 8 minutes.
Leasing side, when all this stuff went down from the MLS removing commissions, it was included in all of this. All these changes, and the lawyers were all over that. And there's so much to do on the purchase side that they basically said, listen, we're not going to deal with that right now. No. Landlords and tenants have at it. And it has, at least in my mind, stayed predominantly the same.
Yep.
There are two numbers that I have in my head. One is based on a monthly rate that gets paid out between the agents, and the other one is a percentage of the annual.
And those again are negotiable.
Yeah. All right, so
always have been.
Let's put that aside. We've explained that there's a listing agreement, and it's still very straightforward. Hey, before anything gets started, you're hiring me, Mr. Seller.
Right.
You're going to pay me this at closing. Let's put that aside.
Yep.
Now, what has really changed, at least people should be doing it this way, and there's still a lot of agents that don't have the courage or the ability to do this, is buyers used to go and potentially reach out to a number of agents and have a number of agents working for them.
Yep.
No, that's not the right way to do it, right? And we've talked about in prior shows why that's a bad thing for the buyer. But what was also dictated from the National Association of Realtors when we made this change.
Realtors.
Thank you. Is that we must have a buyer-broker agreement in place
before you can
with
show
the buyer.
A property.
Not only that, before you can show a property, but also remember, realtors, part of the National Association of Realtors. I love that. You could say it one more time.
No, Realtor.
Thank you. Part of that NAR group, they basically own the MLS. So not only can't we show a property, we cannot show results of potential properties to go see before we have a buyer's broker agreement in place. Okay? It seems at the surface not like a bad thing. Okay? Mr. Buyer, you want to have professional representation? You want to select me? Great. Here's our agreement between the two of us. Okay? What the agreement has is, hey, if you're going to hire me, you're going to pay me. When are you going to pay me? At close. At close. Right? There's an option to have a retainer. That's kind of silly. But 99.9% of the time, the buyer is going to pay you at close. Okay. The problem is the seller is going to have the money from the proceeds of the sale of their house. No problem paying the commission. The buyer is basically saying up front, before they've even found a house or even been given a list of houses to go see, I'm going to pay you at closing. Well, what about those closing costs? What about prepaid for insurance and taxes? And
they're just so low here in Miami. Our taxes and our insurance.
The amount of money that a buyer has to come up with has just increased another couple of $1,000.
It takes more
maybe
buying
even
power.
Tens of thousands.
It takes more buying power away that they can't make that 20 or 22% down payment that gets them into would now be in everywhere a jumbo loan.
All right. Now here's the rub, and folks, this is going to get a little insight, and then we're going to finish up strong. So the buyer has an agreement with their agent. The seller has an agreement with their agent. Everybody knows who's paying what at closing, so that they can take care of their respective professionals.
Right.
Okay. Contract gets signed. They're they're getting their way through. The contract is ready to go. There's still more. On the contract, by the way, we were talking about addenda.
To quote Vinny,
in order to attach the addenda to the contract, they're little check boxes. Hey, this addenda,
seller's disclosure.
Right. Okay. You put it all there because that's the only way to bind all those papers together. Do you know what's missing off that?
Buyer's broker.
Not the buyer's broker agreement, because that's separate. That's between the buyer and the agent.
I took a guess.
FF and GG, those are the letters, because we've been through all the single letters, right? FF and GG are additional addenda that binds the buyer's broker agreement and the listing agreement to the contract. Didn't we already have an agreement? No, we got to have more paper, more addenda. And it isn't even listed on the contract terms, right? We will at some point, but the contract hasn't been updated to the current rules that we're supposed to follow. So now we're out having an additional agreement signed by the respective brokers, so they know how to transfer the money.
I'm old and I'm really I just can't handle it right now. That's So
I'm a man of leisure. I'm gonna wait for all this stuff
to just basically pan out.
I'm gonna wait another 3-4 months. Things will be better.
Continuing being
will it be better?
I'm gonna continue being a listing agent, and then let all of the buyer's agents come to me with chaos that I can try to figure out.
I love that statement because that's what I do as well. Predominantly listings, right? Do I help people that are buyers?
Yeah,
sure, I do. Yeah. And on occasion, if somebody refers me, clearly I'm going to do anything that a current customer or a past customer wants me to do.
You asked how do we get our clients?
Yeah,
that's it.
That's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
All right. So besides that, do you do anything to attract your customers?
No.
Really?
Seriously, the only thing I do, and I've been doing it for years and years and years, is I always stay available to my clients for any issues that they may have. So once they've bought a home, I don't hound them. I am the boss says that I am the what is it called, undercover agent. So I've always been that way. So if you get an email from me or something like that, it's because maybe something is happening that maybe you should know about it. But for me to just pound you information, no. We're always available. And this is what I've told everybody and over and over and over. We're in the real estate business. We are in the customer service business. We just do the highest end customer service that exists. And we are professionals. If you're doing it right, you are a pro. and you are doing things that, you know, are in the best interest of your clients. I've always said that we're going to get paid one way or another, right? But the end goal is to make sure that your client is satisfied. And sometimes you can't satisfy everybody. I mean, but you try. Our best effort is that. That client remembers that because it is one of the number one highest end purchases that they will ever do.
For sure.
And that stays within who helped them and assist them. And especially if it's a successful transaction and everything moves in the right direction and you've assisted. But what I've always said is, and I tell them, you have my number. It hasn't changed since 1984. Neither has my email.
Then tell your number.
305-582-5085. For all you spammers and hackers, have at it. And I'm available. And if they call me, I need a plumber, I need this, whatever. Any pertinent information, you have to make yourself accessible and available. And that's your success. There's no magic bullet to it, man. This is customer service. Take care of your client. Don't take care of yourself. Take care of your client. Obviously, you can tell. I'm going to take care of myself.
Hav, you are a wealth of information and awfully funny at just the right time.
Thank you.
I am MiamiHal. You can take a look at my website, which is constantly being updated. And right now, we're really kicking some butt there. It's MiamiHal.com. And if you want to get in touch with either one of us, we're here to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
And be professionals for you.
Exactly.
Until next week. Actually, it's going to be 3 weeks before I'm back on the show.
3 weeks.
We'll see you in 3 weeks.
Sad. Bye, guys.
Bye.
No hay duda alguna que nuestra ciudad de Doral es bella y muy privilegiada. Doral es una ciudad que ofrece a residentes las mejores y mayores posibilidades. Pero lamentablemente después de 20 años de su fundación, estamos atravesando tiempos difíciles y sin el apoyo de nuestras autoridades. El alto costo de la vida. Los precios de la comida han subido enormemente y los sueldos se han quedado estancados, atacando la calidad de vida de nuestros residentes. Nuestras calles son más inseguras porque no tenemos suficientes policías, dejando pocos los que quedan mal pagados y sobretrabajados. Necesitamos más policías y que ganen y vivan dignamente, con buenos sueldos y beneficios. Necesitamos una buena administración de los recursos de nuestra ciudad. Basta del amiguismo. Los oficiales electos deben de actuar y dejar de hablar. Yo soy Juan Carlos Esquivel, candidato a la silla 3 para el Consejo de la Ciudad de Doral. Este noviembre 5 del 2024, apóyame con tu voto. Anuncio político pagado y aprobado por la campaña de Juan Carlos Esquivel para la silla 3 del Consejo de la Ciudad de Doral.
En el Doral, Unlimited Impressions and Printing. Impresión de alta calidad, atención personalizada, producción de material gráfico y publicidad impresa. Los mejores acabados y encuadernación con una creatividad absoluta. Unlimited Impressions le ofrece todo lo relacionado en impresión para su empresa. Experiencia y calidad. Llámenos al 305-468-0013 o búsquenos en las redes sociales bajo @Unlimited Impressions.